morning once again and welcome to the Point. It is Thursday, April the 16th, 2020. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Television Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, those of you on GBN channels 7, 11 and 20, and the loyal listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9 and Hot 98.5, 98.7. Thank you once again for tuning in. This morning we're gonna replay the press briefing by the head of the Community Relations Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force, Superintendent Vanny Kerwin, as well as Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture. They both facilitated a press briefing yesterday. I had some questions from some members of the public on the telephone, on the WhatsApp, inquiring about some of the things highlighted yesterday. So I thought instead of trying to answer them individually, I would just replay the press briefing. It's approximately half an hour, and then when the press briefing is finished, we'll come back and have a discussion on what was highlighted during the press briefing. Okay? All right, so we're going to replay the press briefing from yesterday. Yes, Timmy, go forth and multiply.
Of Community Relations in the Royal Grenada Police Force, and also Mr. Elvis Maureen, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture and Lands, and we're about the operational guidelines for farmers and fishermen. We know a lot was said yesterday, so we're here again to just update you, just to ensure that everybody knows what will be taking place. As we mentioned, the operation guidelines for farmers and fishermen. So without any further ado, I will turn you over to Superintendent Vanny Kerwin.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Leslie. Yesterday, press briefing, I did indicate that there are some issues that needed further details and further drilling down into. The committee worked overnight and have been able to finalize some of the issues we mentioned yesterday, and I'm happy today to bring you some details as it relates to the operations of the fishermen and farmers as we go into the shopping days for the next 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So in keeping with the exemption granted to fishermen, the Royal Grenada Police Force, acting on the advice of the Cabinet of Grenada, hereby advises that only small boats will be allowed to engage in fishing with 2 persons per boat. With regards to seine or net fishing, 12 persons are permitted to manage the net, with 3 being positioned on each side. Provisions are not currently made for the larger type fishing trawlers, but this will be taken into consideration and a subsequent announcement will be made. The RGPF commend the fishermen for understanding to ensure that physical distancing protocols will be observed in the permitted activities. To ensure compliance with the operating guidelines established by the RGPF, a police officer will be present to observe the activity whenever a net is pulled in. The RGPF advises that should there be any violation, the activity will be discontinued. Under the approved exemption, fishermen are not permitted to sell the catch directly to the public to prevent the potential for crowding and violation of the physical distance protocol. All sales will be made to licensed vendors who will package the produce in 2, 5, and 10-pound bags for sale to the public. The public is advised that all sales will be made from the fish market or by the vendor traveling through the villages. All fishing activities, including sales, will take place on regular shopping days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. With regard to farm produce, 6 farmers' market will be established on the 3 assigned shopping days this week at the following location: the National Athletic Stadium Car Park, St. George; Victoria Vegetable Market, St. Mark; Guave Vegetable Market, St. John; Natural Works, St. David; Satters Bus Terminus, St. Patrick; Grenville Bus Terminus, St. Andrews, P.T. Martinique Emma's Supermarket, and on the sister island of Carriacou, residents will be served through the MNIB depot and established vendors, in keeping with the protocol on COVID-19. Farmers wishing to sell their produce at the established markets on the assigned shopping days are required to contact the Ministry of Agriculture on telephone number 417-2355 to confirm their participation. The RGPF advises farmers and vendors of the following guidelines. 1. A maximum of 2 persons will be allowed per vending station in keeping with the physical distancing protocol. 2. Mask or other type of face covering must be worn at all times. 3. Frequent hand washing or the use of hand sanitizer is strictly required. 4. A vending station may be established with small tents or at the back of a pickup where feasible. 5. Farmers and vendors should have a minimum of 700 pounds of fresh produce. 6. Fresh produce should be prepackaged in bundles valued at $5, $10, and $20. Farmers are expected to set up between the hours of 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. Produce should not be stored on site at the end of the shopping day. Farmers and vendors must maintain the assigned location over the designated period of the 3 days. The RGPF further advises that small farmers and vendors and established roadside vendors are allowed to operate their activities on the assigned shopping days of Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of this week. All are reminded to adhere to established protocols on COVID-19. The erection of new booths or vending stations along the roadside is not permitted, and persons should refrain from loitering in the vicinity of roadside vending locations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent Fanny Cohen. P.S. Maureen, any brief statement you'd like to make before we take questions?
Well, it's not much, but I just want to say thank you very much for this initiative. The Ministry of Agriculture is very pleased because we know, when farmers' livelihood basically is affected, and so we are happy to provide an avenue for them to really serve the public fresh produce. And we know this is twofold because, of course, at this time, we are advised to consume, as much fresh produce as possible. At the time of preparing this document last night, as we made our various site visits today, we sort of upscale a bit. So we providing some tents because we didn't have that in the mix, but of course the condition is terrible out there. So we'll be providing some tents at location that would help, to ease the burden of persons, being there. And I just want to encourage again persons to behave in a very orderly manner and to understand that this arrangement may not be perfect, but of course, as time goes on, we are looking at 3 days, so therefore we can improve things as we go along. So we want people to cooperate as much as possible, and to bring whatever to our attention, we would have officers available there to hear the concerns and the complaint, so we can move forward. So we want them to really take this, into serious consideration as we try to maintain order, and of course observe all the protocols as it relates to COVID-19.
Thank you, P.S. It seems as though nobody has a question as yet. Somebody has a question? All right, colleagues, anybody has questions? A brief statement was made by both Superintendent Kerwin and P.S. Elvis Morin. Anybody has questions? Mikey Hutchinson, good afternoon. Go ahead.
All right, good afternoon, gentlemen. Thanks for the opportunity once more. In your presentation, Superintendent Cohen, you mentioned a small boat. How do we define a small boat?
Sorry, thank you for your question, Mikey. There are different types of fishing boats. There are the pirogue, they are the fishing trawlers. Here we're referring to those small boats that usually have 3 or 4 persons on board. But in this particular construct, the regulation does not, or the rules does not have in place for more than 2 persons. We're not talking about the fishing trawlers that usually butt along the carriage. Those carry a lot more than 2. They are outside of the construct that I think the rules are speaking about. So we're talking here about those small fishing boats that usually, but if you go up the western side, you see them tie along along the seashore. Those are the boats that are that I'm speaking of here, and not necessarily the bigger trawlers that will go out for 2 and 3 and 4 days on the outside that require 5, 6, or 7 people.
Mikey, you have another question?
Yes, please. Now, there are boats that may be docked at a particular dock and the owner or workers may be at another location. Are there special provisions made for these workers who would need to traverse from one area to the next to get to the boats?
The answer definitively is yes. Persons wishing to be able to travel within the curfew period to access the boats, they're asked to apply for the necessary pass and permission, so to be able to do. So permission and passes are available, but persons will need to apply for them.
All right. Duncan, good afternoon. Are you there? Okay. You're live. Please go ahead. Duncan, go right ahead. All right. Jared, go ahead.
Okay. In terms, sorry, hold on. In terms of the fishermen, they are expected to go out. We know you said no more than 8 persons for the seine fishing and 2 persons for the vessels, the small vessels. In terms of the transition of the fish from the fishermen to the vendors, how would that be done in order to, well, looking at the social distancing regulations, how would that be done in terms of the transition of the fish to the fishermen to the vendors?
Let me correct part of what you have said first before I answer the question. The amount really is 12 and not 8 as you suggested. And there have to be an arrangement between the fisherman and the vendor to be able to determine how the vendor would take possession of the fish that is being caught. As I see it here, I can't tell you that there is a definitive way of doing it. There has to be an arrangement between the fisherman and the vendor as to where and how the transfer is going to happen.
Jared, do you have another question?
Yes, I do.
All right, go right ahead.
Right. So vendors who normally, I'm talking about the market right now. So vendors who normally come to town, with that restriction, they are not allowed. I'm just trying to clarify. Those who normally come to the St. George's Market, they would not be allowed to travel across the borders. I'm just trying to clarify, just for certainty.
Vending is taking place on a parish basis. So to answer your question definitively, if you're a vendor from outside of St. George, it might be difficult for you to come to St. George to actually do your vending on this particular day. All right, and hence the reason why farmers market is set up in each parish to ensure that vending can be done on a parish basis rather than cross parish boundaries to facilitate the vending.
Jared, are you through?
Yes, for now. Thank you.
All right, great. Is Duncan ready? All right, it seems as though Duncan is not ready. So, Superintendent Cohen, maybe you can just go.
Hello?
Hi. Are you ready now?
Yes, I'm ready now.
All right, go right ahead.
My question is in relation to farmers. There are a lot of farmers within communities that don't act as vendors in terms of they don't go to the market to sell their produce. They sell it within their communities. Will they be afforded an opportunity to do the same on those given days as well?
In fact, I indicated that in my presentation that yes, these farmers would have an opportunity to sell their produce in the villages, but bearing in mind that they must observe those protocols that is set up under the COVID-19 regulation, in that ensuring that the spacing, the 6 feet spacing is in place, ensuring that clustering and gathering and overcrowding does not happen. But to answer your question, yes, farmers who do not sell to vendors and wish to sell for themselves directly, they can do that within the village setting.
Do you have another, Duncan?
I just want to clarify as well. Are farmers able to move about in vehicles? So we may have vendors who don't want to go to a national stadium to vend their produce, but they may want to drive through communities and do that. Will they be also afforded the opportunity to do so?
Good afternoon again. Now, this would definitely defeat the purpose that we are trying to put forward. In our whole arrangement and operationalization, we, at some of the venues, we allow for persons to come with their vehicle. We don't want to have, people just moving around and moving across, because remember, you will not be able to move across the border, right? So we are saying to persons that to make use of the facilities that are available, as much as possible. We would prefer persons with a lot of produce to go to the market, unlike setting up their own establishment by the road. We think this is critical. So we are creating that avenue for persons to come in a very organized way where we can control as much as possible the activity.
Duncan, you have another question?
Yes, hopefully my last. Quickly, for vendors who normally buy their produce from farmers outside of the parish that they vend in. So for example, I live in St. George and I vend in St. George, and I buy my produce from, let's say, St. Andrew. How or what arrangements are being made to ensure that these that this produce is replenished?
For the last few weeks, we have been advising the public that to move about during the period of the curfew, you will require a pass to do so. We have made passes available to farmers to be able to tend to their crops in the field. And if somebody wishes to do exactly what you are asking, then all they need to do is to apply for the requisite permission, stating the purpose and the business, why they need to go out of the parish. It will be considered, and I'm sure that if there is merit in it, a pass or permission will be granted to them to go outside of the parish, to collect the produce, to come back into the parish to sell. But cross-border boundaries have to be regarded and respected. But we have been allowing supply trucks to cross the parish boundaries. We have been allowing other persons to cross the parish boundaries, but it has to be on a case-by-case basis. An application has to be made and considered, and if there is merit in it, permission will be granted so to do.
All right, Superintendent Kerwin, I just want us to make sure we have it clear so that people understand on the days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, when these activities will be carried out as the shopping days. Just put it into context for us, when people must know, okay, this is cut-off point and you need to be back inside.
I think it's important for me to remind the public that we are still under 24-hour curfew. These restrictions, this curfew, there is some leeway that is now being given. And I'm glad that you asked that question, because a lot of questions have been posed to me. I'm understanding now that nail technician shops are going to be opening, and gyms are going to be opening, and hairdressing salons are going to be opening. I want to caution the public here. We are not there yet. Those businesses are not allowed to be opened at this point. Vending supermarkets are given an opportunity to extend the time so that produce can be sold and be acquired by those who need it. So shopping for Thursday, Friday, and Saturday is from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Vending that we are speaking of now, the fishermen and the farmers who are vending, that process also is within the stipulated time of when shops will be opening, which is 9 and 5. And I want to take the opportunity to say here that farmers cannot set up prior to 6 o'clock. So setting up in these farm markets is between 6 and 8, and they will go up to 5 o'clock, which is the same time that the supermarkets will be allowed to open. At the end of 5 o'clock, we know it's going to take some vendors, some farmers, some customers, some time to get back home based on where you live. So if you come to the farmers market, probably will take you about half an hour or so to get back home. So by 5:30, 6 o'clock, we do expect everyone to be back at home, and the curfew kicks in again for the night until the next morning.
Thank you. Mikey, go right ahead.
Okay. Particularly for the fishermen, what's the earliest time can they go out to catch their fish?
Thank you very much, Mikey. I believe they would have to still stay within the whole parameter in terms of the movement. No, we allow some never farmers to leave. I think it's from 6 o'clock, right? So in that case, I would expect that they shouldn't be moving before 6, of course, but they can move to get to wherever the boats are, and they can move from there and come back within the stipulated time.
Gerard, go right ahead. Mikey, 1 sec. Gerard, go ahead.
Okay. Superintendent Cohen, you would have highlighted that the farmers market for St. David's was at the nature center. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Why the nature center and why not the playing field, which is larger, which would be able for people to practice social distancing?
Good afternoon. Now, we chose that area because those of us who know St. David's well, is one of the areas where persons already have established booths on the roadside selling vegetables, right? So you can go through St. David's and you can get that facility. So we are trying just to pull the bigger vendors in that location. And as I said earlier, we are looking at it. It's not just if it means that after tomorrow's experience we realize that, hey, you need to find somewhere that with a little more space, we would do that, right? But for now, as I said, we would not get it perfect, but we believe based on some of the activities already that are taking place within the parish of St. David, we can accommodate, to a great extent in that area.
Do you have another, Gerard?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Just my final. Superintendent Cohen, I think this. In terms of for farmers as well as fishermen, you would have highlighted several restrictions, regulations. What are the penalties if the farmers or fishermen break such restrictions or regulations?
The Act provides for a fine of $1,000 or imprisonment for 12 months. So any of the provisions of the Act that is violated, the perpetrator can be fined up to $1,000 and can be in prison for up to 12 months.
All right, Mikey? Go ahead, Mikey. You need to unmute your mic, Mikey.
Yes. The fishermen are to sell the fish to the known vendors. I'm not sure I heard anywhere, speaking of designated places where they can get the ice to purchase, whether or not there are specific stations for them to purchase the ice, or they can just go looking for ice.
Mikey, the vendors basically would operate, and we're talking about people who are established, people who are actually plying that trade before. So the facility in terms of where you get ice, because we have the markets, the fish markets are the areas basically that where you have some of the activities taking place, so the ice will be provided that way. Now, what I need to validate, because it's a very good question you ask, because in some of our fish markets, not all the places the plant is up and running. So that is something that we need to offer some clarity in terms of how we go forward. So I need to double check that and maybe give some clarity a bit later on that.
You have another question, Mikey?
No, that's it.
All right. Nobody? Seems we have no more questions. So, gentlemen, I think we can wrap up. We said we wouldn't be very long today. So, Superintendent Kerwin, I'll give you the opportunity first of all, and then, of course, PS Maureen. But just to make it clear, the shopping days is from 8 to 5. The time is 8 to 5. The opportunity to make any final remarks you'd like to make.
In closing, I just want to urge the public that tomorrow is not a day for social activities. In fact, the next 3 days are not days for social activities. You should only be out of your house tomorrow if you're going to the supermarket, if you're going to the farmer's market, or in other words, you must be purposeful, because we're still in the area of, we're still under curfew, and a leeway is given so that these activities can take place, and it must be focused on that. So all of the other businesses that I heard would be opening, I want to urge, please pay particular attention to the regulation. Do not violate the terms of the regulation. Stay within the ambits of what it is asking us to do. And the next 3 days are shopping days, days for fishermen and for farmers only. And you have to be purposeful about your business, not just drive around Grenada sightseeing, not just coming out to having a good time. It is not business as usual, because we are not at the stage where we can let our guard down. So I want to urge you, if you're going to be out, please wear your mask. Please wear some form of face covering. Wash your hands as often as you can. Use hand sanitizer as frequently as you can use it, and consider the next person to you, the next person at the side of you, to be infected. If you take that approach and you see everyone else as somebody who has the virus, you know that what you have to do to keep yourself protected and safe.
Thank you, Superintendent. PS Maureen?
Thank you very much. I am just happy because the Ministry of Agriculture, we have been listening to, the calls and the complaints from farmers all the time. We do appreciate what they're doing, in terms of helping to keep the sector where it is. We know that they invest a lot, and it's sometimes painful to see things go to waste. So I want to ask the farmers and, of course, vendors to please abide, by the regulations. I believe, in other words, this should be a precursor as to how we go forward, because we are making requests all the time, of the RGPF. And of course, we are happy that today we can at least give something good back to the farmers. So we want them not to spoil it, as we will say. I also want to ask person to take, the period that we are in very seriously. People can sometimes, be a little bit relaxed. We have to understand that we are nowhere close to out of this yet. And while I see many opportunities out of this, I believe, first of all, we have to strive to remain healthy. We have to strive to make sure that this nation is healthy, and I want to ask everybody, to play his or her part to ensure that we continue to minimize, and of course, not to have maybe one case. One case is one, too many. So I want to ask persons to really cooperate as much as possible. And let us find time to really be innovative and creative, because out of this, there are many opportunities to be derived, from this, in particular the agriculture sector. I think this creates a gold mine for the agriculture sector. So I want to say to everybody, let us keep going and let us see what we can do. Before I came here, I realized somebody talked about the exporters. What happened with the exporters? These are things that we are working on, and gradually we get there. So at least as we continue to discuss, who knows, maybe in the next couple of days we might get something out of this. But for now, our focus is to give the farmers and the vendors, some leverage, and we are very grateful.
I just want to say something that I've omitted. In yesterday's press briefing, I indicated that 2 boats will be made available for persons, residents of Petit Martinique, to travel to Carriacou for the purpose of shopping. I want to clarify that. Instead of 2 boats being made available, 2 trips will be made available instead of 2 boats. So it may be the same boat making 2 trips as opposed to 2 boats, as was said yesterday. I just thought I wanted to clear that up so the people of Petit Martinique knows that there'll be 2 trips and not 2 boats. Thanks.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, viewers. Of course, we know this is something new for everybody, and we're all trying to accommodate people as much as possible. So let us work with the government and, of course, the Ministry of Health and the Royal Grenada Police Force as much as we can. And as P.S. Maureen said, good news for farmers, fishermen, and the people, of course, who like to have the fresh produce and the fish and all that. And as Superintendent Vanny Cohen said, it is not time for sightseeing. Let us do what we have to do purposefully and get back home. We are still under the curfew period. So thank you so much for viewing. I'm Leslie Ann Johnson.
We believe this new virus spreads mostly from person to person through respiratory droplets produced when someone who is sick coughs or sneezes. This is similar to how flu and other respiratory illnesses spread. These droplets can land in the mouth or nose of people nearby, or possibly be inhaled into the lungs. Most person-to-person spread happens when people are in close contact. It's also possible that this virus can spread when someone touches a contaminated surface and then touches the mouth, nose, or eyes.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself.
Welcome back to The Point. We just heard the news conference held yesterday by Superintendent Vanny Cohen and Mr. Elvis Moraine, PS in the Ministry of Agriculture, as it relates to things that would take place for fishermen and farmers today. Like I said earlier this morning in Good Morning Grenada, I have been searching for the news conference conducted yesterday by newly appointed Leader of the Opposition, Tobias Clement, and luckily I've been able to lay my hands on it while the news conference was being played. So in that light, I would rebroadcast the news conference from yesterday with Mr. Clement, because I know some people have been asking me about that in the WhatsApp. I received about 2-3 calls this morning asking about it as well and what he said. So we will replay Mr. Clement's news conference from yesterday as well. That's what we're doing this morning. As part of our information center, we're going to let you know what's happening and reiterate some of the things that have been taking place recently. So now let's go to the news conference yesterday by newly appointed Leader of the Opposition, Tobias Clement.
I'm streaming to you from my home because we have to adhere to the protocol that COVID-19 brought upon us. That is to keep inside and keep as safe as much as possible, because I do believe our lives and the lives of our friends and family do depend on this moment. So I thank you for joining me here today. Yesterday, as you guys know, I went at the request of the Governor General, and she made available to me the instruments of appointment as the Leader of the Opposition here in Grenada. I requested of her that instrument 2 weeks ago, and in her own deliberate judgment that was done yesterday. Like I said before, I want to express my gratitude to my family, to my God, to my friends who have been a pillar of support for me in this time. I make a stand now because I believe in democracy. And sometimes, regardless of what time it is, we must stand for democracy. Yes, we are in the fight and struggle for our lives, but I have known people that have fought and died for democracy. So I think this is a fight that is worth fighting for, even at this present moment. And I hope and pray to God that He would give me the strength and to continue and to do the right thing always, so that at the end of the day, it is about the development of this beautiful country of ours and not ourselves. You know, I look at government, and I look at government seriously, in that we have the executive branch, we have the legislative branch, and we have the judiciary branch. In some countries, and I hope also in Grenada, that the fourth estate will also play a part, and that is the media, in terms of bringing the kind of transparency and governance that we want to see that is best for our country. So with that said and done, what I plan to do now, I put out a statement yesterday, and I just will fill a couple questions. This is scheduled for 30 minutes, and I think the time is going to come when I believe I will be approached by all the media houses, and everybody now is trying to fight to see who would get the first major interview. You know, we have to start from the north and come to the south, but I will in time speak to everyone, because it is worth speaking to. Yesterday also, besides swearing in yesterday, we had our finance committee meeting, and that was to discuss the stimulus package that the Prime Minister spoke about. And I believe that you are now well informed that it will be brought to Parliament on Friday, so there will be a sitting of Parliament on Friday, because it is in the Constitution that before you bring in any money or any new money, anything that has to be spent from the consolidated funds must pass through Parliament. And so I hope that Parliament, as it convened on Friday, which is almost 5 months, we would step up to the plate and do the deliberation and let the debate be in Parliament, so that the people can be made aware of what is taking place in our country. So once again, I thank you for coming. I thank you for participating. So I will field some questions now. Thank you. So you can say your name, and I will take the question one by one. Good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon. Terry and Blackman, Stephen from GBN. Mr. Clement, I want to know, first of all, why was this the decision? What prompted you to make that decision during a pandemic? Why not before, or why not after? And secondly, before you go, I want to ask you as well, have you had any time to decide who are the 3 people you're going to choose as your senators?
Thank you very much, ma'am. And these are 2 very important questions. The question that is asked, why now? And I asked the question, why not now during a pandemic? I say we have, some people talk about lives to save. Yes, we have lives to save. And I also feel that we have a democracy to save. Listen, the last time Parliament met was in 2019. That was long before COVID, almost 5 months. I know the Constitution stipulates that 6 months must not elapse. But think about it. I'm sitting there and I heard that the Prime Minister announced this big stimulus package, and yet there was no talk about passing it through Parliament. Someone sent me a message when I made that announcement, or when I approached the Governor General for the instrument, and the quote went like this: what would Jesus do? Jesus would say, I will see to you after the rain is over and all is well. And so imagine I make this move now after all this is over. Wouldn't you ask me, well, where I come from now? I know somebody that would ask, where did he come from now when things were going on? And so I believe in a time like this, a lot is happening, even while we speak here. COVID-19 here now seems to be a distraction for governments, not only in Grenada, but in other countries now, while people are distracted to do other things. I believe by moving, I have again raised the awareness of our Grenadian people that subtly there is a trend that is taking place in our country, as if, well, all decisions that are made by cabinet is law and is final. But we do have a parliament. And I do believe now that, you see, even under COVID-19, Friday we are meeting. I think all other countries where you have parliament before now met to put structures and to pass laws to administer to the country before Friday. Yet Grenada was lagging behind. So is the point? I think the point is made, and the effect that is created is a good one. But then the question that I can ask you, when would have been the right time? For some people, it would have never been the right time. The second question that you asked, did I consider or did I choose? In my own deliberate judgment, I have spoken to quite a number of people, and quite a number of people have expressed interest. And in my own deliberate judgment, I will again inform the Governor General in due course as to who my choices would be. But as for now, I am not going to release any names as yet. So thank you very much for your question. Next person, please. Next question.
Yes, good afternoon, MP Clement. Kellen Bob, I'm a freelance journalist in the diaspora, in Washington, D.C. to be precise. So you would have resigned from the New National Party perhaps about more than almost a year now, and you can correct me.
No. Let me correct you. I tendered my resignation from the New National Party on the 20th of November 2019, that was last year, November. So it's just about going on 5 months.
So 5 months, okay. So yeah. I'm trying to understand the logic behind your decision not to immediately cross the floor at the point at which you left the New National Party, as opposed to now crossing the floor during this particular national emergency. What was your thought?
The emergency is not just national, but it is global. The thing about it, I do believe that I was not rushed into making such a decision, but I made the decision in that I felt that it was very necessary now. I would rather be slow and deliberate and correct than to make drastic action and then have to go back and correct the actions that I have made before. decisions like this are no light decisions. And so you can just imagine, especially now that it's a mammoth task to make a decision in a time like this. But in a time like this, again, as I said, to raise awareness of even the state of our democracy, and to raise awareness of while COVID-19 is going on. The food estate in Grenada may ask, what else is going on? I would not have to prompt them, but there are a lot of other things that are going on that would need the food estate to talk or to speak up and to do the investigative journalism and to probably help me and help Grenadians as to educate them as to what is the state of affairs in our country. COVID-19, again, yes, it is a matter of life or death, but the conditions that some of us are living under, coming out of COVID-19, it would be a different country, a different world, and that is what we would have to think about. And am I also involved in the fight against COVID? Yes, you bet I am. In my constituency, yes, and I've been calling on other people to help in that regards too. So the timing can be debated forever, but what should I do? Wait until the storm is over and then join the fight? The COVID-19 is indeed a fight. You know, it is a national fight, it's a global fight, and one should not wait until the fight is over, then join. Then what? I do not cower and hide in a shell. That is not who I am. Next question, please. I see I have 8 participants, and
I can.
hello.
If I can, if nobody else has a question asked, can I go ahead, please?
Well, sure.
Okay. I wanted, Mr. Clement, because you were being affiliated with the LP not so long ago, stop questioning your motive. What do you need to kind of allay fear that you are actually trustworthy?
Yes, I have been affiliated with the New National Party and the New National Party for a very long time, from 1989 to 2019. So that is probably almost 30 years. But even before I left the New National Party, you probably and a lot of people in the media would have always known that I don't want to sound as if I was always antagonistic, but probably you would know that one of the things that I promised myself that I will do is to speak truth to power. And there are times, yes, I hold my peace, but if I am your colleague and I cannot speak the truth to you, and like I've always done, maybe that was one of the reasons why it seemed like as if I was always in trouble. But to challenge the status quo, to challenge leadership. But then when you challenge or you criticize and you become almost public enemy number one, then it means, therefore, that you will have to, if it just cannot jive together, then you would have to leave, and that is what I have done. I challenge the status quo of the NNP, the leadership of the NNP, that was in terms of our democracy. And I think there are a lot of things that maybe we could not see eye to eye in terms of policy, in terms of where things are. And the last thing that I looked at is the treatment of the constituency office, and that has to be part of the debate in going forward. for the first time in the history of the Commonwealth Parliament Association of any parliament anywhere, the vote for the constituency office was moved from under Parliament and placed under the Prime Minister's ministry. So it is almost like under the Prime Minister's ministry, they will determine what goes on in the constituency office. And to me, that is so undemocratic. Yes, we must understand the division of government. You have the executive, you have the legislative, you have the judiciary, and I would hope that the fourth estate will take its place. But then when you have that the leadership of the country wants to control all three branches of government, then that cannot be healthy for our democracy. I hope that answers your question. That I would not want to be a thorn in anybody's side, but to speak truth to power and to call a spade, then I think you know that is who I am and that is who I have always been.
Okay, and if I can ask again, you basically was prompted to get on board and take up your instrument as opposition leader because of the COVID-19. What is your take on government's stimulus package and the measures put towards trying to safeguard Grenada against the spread of COVID-19 thus far?
Well, I believe that they put forward a package that in its estimation, it's up to $50 million. I think that would be a drop in the bucket. I hope that going forward, it would be just a start. But I will also keep in mind too that with this state of emergency and this disaster, it is not only Grenada alone. And the same funds that Grenada is crying out for, all other countries are crying out for it too. I do believe that in terms of revenue, government revenue, it was difficult to come by already. And I know the revenue that will be collected from since then to now would have been even below, a lot below, maybe less than 50% of what is expected. When you look at other countries like, well, the United States, $2.something billion package, Germany, 780 billion euros, and other countries are doing that. Can we as a country do that? I do not see us coming up there, but we would have to come up with something that would start alleviating some of the problems, especially our poor and disadvantaged people. My take on it would be I would want to see and I would want to know where these monies go. I mean, accountability for any monies that are given is what I would ask for. Is it enough? In my estimation, maybe not. Will it continue? I think it will have to continue because at this point in time, we do not know how long the pandemic would last. And so we would have to step forward and help a lot of our people who are down and out.
Have you decided a name for your party or a name you'll be calling yourself?
Well, I have not yet delved into that. Remember, I'm just starting the process, and I have had a lot of conversation with a lot of people. And since yesterday, a lot of people have called me, and they have expressed interest in helping to develop something from this year. And I would want it to be all inclusive, because at the end of the day, I would say let it not be about me per se. If I'm just the springboard or the avenue or the vehicle to start something positive, to start something new, to start something that is responsible to our people, then let it be that way, but one day at a time. First, my dear, small steps, and then we can take off and fly. But let us get COVID-19 right by our people first. the history would tell you that this is not the first time the world has dealt with a pandemic. And lockdown is very necessary. This what was done in 1918, 1919, and I still believe we cannot treat it lightly, because if we study the history in terms of biology, we'll know that the pandemic, the swine flu or the Spanish flu, had 3 waves. I still am anticipating what will be done, because I say this, that COVID-19, as long as it is anywhere, it is everywhere. Because remember, it's just started in one place in China. Suppose, let's say, Grenada gets rid of it, and Trinidad gets rid of it, and St. Vincent have it, and Barbados just have 1 case. It means the chances are it can escape again and come back in our countries. So to think that the world, okay, Grenada is fighting to get rid of it, and the US is fighting, and everybody do. I mean, we would want to open up. Other countries wanting to see how they would open up their economy and start the economy growing or going again. But if it's in the US, and the US open up and Grenada open up, chances are that it can come again. So I think we have to take a deep breath and remember the history of 1918 and 1919, when the swine flu killed between 50 million to 100 million people. The only difference now is that we have a little bit of improvement in medical technology, where we have respirators so that people can be helped in terms of breathing, but it's not so different. It's just a little mutation.
I have one follow-up question, and that has to do with whether or not you would have consulted with the unofficial opposition party in Grenada. Granted, they do not have a seat in parliament, but they do
have, not at the level of the top echelons of the leadership of the NDC. I have had conversation with the 2 senators and some other supporters of the NDC, not just casual conversation, not in terms of joining NDC, but just in terms of taking Grenada forward in a progressive way, not any in-depth conversation towards that. Thank
Mr.
you.
Clement, George Grant, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, Mr. Clement, I'm sitting here listening with interest. You have Grenada in a very hopeful situation at a time when Grenada really needs hope. We're going through a very difficult time right now. I don't know you very well, sir, but what I can say is that over the years I have watched, and I admit, admired you in Parliament, because you do have a tendency to stand by what you believe. You say what's on your mind. Something's wrong, you say it's wrong. And not too many people in Parliament today can do that for fear. But at the same time, sir, while you may be the best man in the world right now, the truth is, simply by virtue of the fact that you are a politician, you're tainted. And that's sad. That's sad.
That is very sad.
Hold on. Grenada, I believe, wants to reach out. They're looking for somebody they can reach out to. Spend a few minutes, sir, explaining to the people why you should not be considered to be another politician. Speak to us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for your question and your admiration. It has to do a lot with your upbringing. And I come from very humble beginning. Pitima Nekaraku family on both little islands. I started school in Pity Martinique, primary school in Carriacou, high school in Carriacou, and my family orientation, that one of the things that you do not have to be right all the time, but the truth and speaking to somebody, even criticizing, there it can be constructive. And if we could find, and yes, there are times when we will falter, and maybe the lady is right, I should have gone before, and why now? But we need somebody to stand up. Grenada needs somebody to stand up. I mean, I have known Dr. Mitchell for years, and what I say that I have seen so much changes taking place over the years, that things that I see now that would transpire, he would not allow that to happen when he was younger. So then what changes? I mean, people now look at politicians, yes, you're right, with so much great distrust. But then, too, in my humble opinion, sometimes as politicians, we would lead ourselves to get to that point, and sometimes we are driven to that point. But if you find somebody that would stand up, and people ask me about this position, I remember that I read that the great United Kingdom had its feet on the neck of India for 450 years. And one man stood, Mahatma Gandhi, and they said that he was discouraged at every turn. But just one person that stand and caused that change to happen, and India is where India is today. And this is what I'm saying. Maybe a little insignificant me, but if I stand and you stand and people stand, then that is where change starts, with one person standing. And I hope that by standing, like you say, people are scared. And I discovered that people are scared because we know some of the ramifications. But at least we must stand for what we believe in. All right. And if we don't stand for it, then what if as a man, as a human being, whether a man or woman, you cannot stand for what you believe in, then life becomes useless, Mr. Grant.
All right. Mr. Clement, just let me say something. I want you to bear in mind, you're launching into new territory here now as the leader of the opposition. And I just want to give you a teeny weeny little bit of advice. Today, people have very short attention spans. And while you may feel the need to explain in depth a lot of things, it's important to really get to the point and speak to the people point blank, dead on. Tell them, please, sir, try and answer the question I asked you a little while ago. Why should we believe this gentleman who has shown that he's got the medal, sir. He's shown that he's got the medal. But they need to be convinced that you can be trusted and that they're not going to be let down again. God knows, sir, we have been let down in this country over and over again.
I do agree with you, Mr. Grant. And I can tell you, this is not the first time I stood. In 1994, 1995, as a young man, when I stand in Carriacou, that was just the time when Dr. Mitchell took over the New National Party when in that convention. And in my mind, democracy was at work. And even as a youth at the time, I mean, you did not want to be a supporter of Dr. Mitchell or NNP in Carriacou, because you, Mr. Grant, you would have remembered those days. And I felt at the time it was the right thing to do. I felt that it was a convention where he won, and by right he should have been elected leader as he was. And so I stood, I took a lot of blows for it, but then history has shown that even though that I took that blows for standing up at the time, I believe then it was the right thing to do. Standing now again, I believe now is, Mr. Grant, a lot of things are taking place. COVID-19, yes, covers everything, but in terms of the debate as to the direction of our country, in terms of even today, one of the big issues that will have to be looked at that is not yet debated is probably the sale of Greenland. I can remember in 1994, almost all hell broke loose when Greenland was sold. And now it seems like it's just escaping quietly under the radar. I heard it mentioned in the last press briefing just a few days, and nobody paid any mind to it. But there are some questions that must be asked, and critically, they must be asked by the media and by, I will ask some questions. I'm still debating whether or not on Friday in Parliament will be the first salvo, but a lot of questions must be asked. I do not know if they will be answered, but I will stand up and continue to stand up for what I believe, because I believe in what I do. And yes, it is not an easy thing to stand up, and sometimes you're almost standing by yourself, because I go against what the park, Mr. Grant, and it is not an easy thing to leave the park where you could consider peace and safety and life, and to run by yourself. And now I am out there. But the truth about it, I stand and I say my belief in my maker, my king, my family, and a lot of people are standing by my side, Mr. Grant. So I have no fear that
Mr.
at the end
Mr.
of
Clement, Mr. Clement.
Sorry, George.
I gotta go. Cullen, I gotta go.
No,
that's why.
The time will, gentlemen, the time will expire maybe in a minute. So I do not know if we can field any more question, because it was like,
I have one final question. I don't think you fully answered the question that George Grant was asking. The fundamental point is, why now, and what makes you credible as a politician trying to break from that particular mold? I don't think you've answered the question, but I have one question.
Mr. George answered it in some respects, that what you see is what you get. And over the years, up until this point, nobody has ever questioned my deliberation or my motive, because I would ask the difficult question. I would say the things that other people refuse to say. And that is what has emanated from me from time and time again. It is not by accident I am where I am today, in that because I have asked a difficult question, I have challenged the status quo, and I continue to do so. What we say, come hell or high water, if I have to stand, that is what I will do. And that is what
Mr. Clement, the reason why I'm sitting here listening to you is because I have seen your potential, sir. I know what you're capable of, sir. Believe me. We have to go. I have to run right now, and I'm sure Cullen has other questions to ask you, as does Sherry Ann. But, sir, I want to extend an invitation to you to join me on Sunday morning. You have a few days between now and then to think about it, and think again about the questions that both Kellen and I asked you a little while ago, and try and provide us with an answer on Sunday morning. It would go a long way in getting you off to a good start, because there are a lot of people out there whose hopes are riding on you. Don't let them down.
Well,
come talk with me on Sunday morning, sir.
I will try. After this year, we will we'll communicate. I think I sent you an invite this morning, so you can probably shoot me an email, and we will get that program as much as I can. Right?
Okay, and I'll tell you what.
I would.
If Kellen and Sherry would love to join in, we can do this all remotely. Remember, we're maintaining social distance, but I have the capability here.
I may have to do so, and I would have to set up so that the social distancing can be maintained, and it may have to be done remotely. So, Mr. Grant, I will pick you up on that, and I would, at this point in time, want to thank everybody that joined, and there will be a lot of questions still to be asked. Everything cannot be answered in half an hour. It's just, what we say is just breaking out now, and in time, I will try to accommodate each and every one of you, and as we move forward. So thank you, and I would urge each and every one of us to continue to keep safe, continue to keep our family safe, and adhere to the protocols that are in place. Thank you, and God bless you all.
All right, that was the news conference held yesterday by recently appointed Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Tobias Clement. I have a question here that asked if he would be the guest on Tuesdays. That is a discussion and a decision that needs to be made at a managerial level between management and Mr. Clement going forward, because Tuesdays are really set aside for the main opposition or the opposition. And with the appointment of him as Leader of the Opposition, the discussion would be held on how we would go forward with To the Point, especially on Tuesdays. We have gone much overboard with To the Point this morning, but I thought it relevant to share those two news conferences with you. Thank you once again for tuning in. Continue to be safe. Do what you need to stay COVID-free. It's a busy day in around the island, a matter of fact, around the Tri-Island today. So if you're heading out, remember to walk with your masks and everything that you need to walk with to stay COVID-19 free. Have yourselves a productive Thursday. Be safe on the road and at home, and let us do our part and be COVID-19 smart, be wise, and sanitize. Have yourselves a good day. I'll be back with you tomorrow, God willing. David is up next with Mid-Morning Buzz.
Expression is expressed through a host of singers, singing as with one voice. We are reminded by the choirs of your mystical body, which, though made up of many parts, is one body and energized by the same spirit. I pray that each choir today will be infused with the spirit of excellence, joy, and creativity in expression. I ask that this auditorium reverberate from the richness of the melodies emanated from these eager singers. I thank you for the Grenada Broadcasting Network's initiative in providing yet another avenue for the showcasing of this aspect of our culture, and using the schools as the nursery from which hopefully will blossom a beautiful tree, nourishing institutional and national pride. We give you thanks for all those who invested in this virgin event and pray that there will be a marriage of sponsors in the GBN to produce events like this each year. Now, be with each choir and their several members. Calm their nerves and bring out the very best in each singer, and may we be entertained and you glorified. In Jesus' name we pray.
Oh, Grenada, land of Oz, we pledge ourselves to thee. As heart and hands in unity to reach our destiny, ever conscious of God, being proud of our heritage, may we with faith and courage aspire, build, advance as one people, one family. God bless our nation.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Acting General Manager of the Grenada Broadcasting Network, Mrs. Marlene Phillip.
A pleasant afternoon to all, and welcome to the GBN's inaugural secondary school choir competition. Team GBN is elated to bring you this event. If I may speak for most persons here, this initiative has highlighted talents and creativity beyond what we originally envisioned. As a build-up from the semifinals held, we can expect to see amazing presentations with originality, passion, and energy beaming from each choir. The GBN, along with the support from the ministry and our generous corporate sponsors, continues to share the same vision: to promote and develop our nation's children. We are overjoyed again to welcome